What's going on, guys? It's the Unhinged Engineer here, back today with a super big announcement. If you've been a regular viewer of the channel for the last couple months, you've probably heard me allude to some big project or big thing I was working towards, and I'm finally able to share that with you. So I'm super stoked. But before I get into that announcement, I just want to thank all of my regular viewers. I know over the last few months, my uploads have been kind of more erratic and more like off the cuff instead of as organized as I usually like them to be. And so I'm really grateful that you've stuck with me throughout that time. Hopefully those videos are still interesting to you and helpful, right? But today, I'm excited to share that project I was working on was actually a job hunt, and it thankfully paid off. So I did sign a new position that I'll be starting in the next couple months. Super stoked about it. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And so I want to share with you how I actually managed to secure this new job in aerospace engineering. Today's video will primarily just be a narrative. I'll just talk about the process I went through, from applications to interviews to negotiations, just kind of give you an idea of what it was like for somebody doing this in 2025. And then in part two, I'll be much more concrete about it. I'll try to distill what I went through into concrete lessons that you can use yourself going into whatever interviews you may do in the future. Okay, so to give you some context, I studied aerospace engineering in college. I graduated a couple of years ago, and I've been working as a software engineer for the last 2 years. So while I was in school, the work I did both in classes and in internships was mostly about flight software with like guidance, navigation, and control algorithms, as well as like modeling and simulation to validate these kinds of algorithms. And I did that at a few different companies of varying size and variety. Yeah, that was what I did in school, and that obviously required a lot of code in languages like C++, and trying to write it in a performant way that makes the most of our resources. And so I wound up getting a position doing that same kind of thing, but purely for artificial intelligence applications. So that's what I've been up to for the last couple of years. In that time, I met my girlfriend, now fiance, and recently we decided that we were going to move across the country for her to continue her schooling, go to grad school. And at that point, obviously, I really wanted to follow her. And so we decided, okay, at some point in the future, I'm definitely gonna wanna get a new job in this new location we're gonna be at. That said, I really love my current job, and I wanted to make sure that I secured a position that I was really passionate about. I didn't want to take somewhere that was subpar just to follow her out as soon as possible. And we were both prepared for that to take as long as it takes, right? That said, I was convinced by some friends to kind of put out some feelers, and I'm really glad that they convinced me, so I definitely owe them a beer. And thankfully, some of those feelers hit way more quickly than I possibly anticipated, which is why I'm talking to you about this today. That's also part of why the last couple months have been such a shit show. So I wasn't really expecting things to pick up as quickly as they did. So now I'm going to get into the actual process of going through applications, interviews, and negotiating at the end. I'm not going to use any company names for obvious reasons. So I'm gonna keep things vague, not include any specific details, but I will definitely go through the chronology of what the processes were like for different companies and ultimately how things shook out. So I'm gonna try to give you guys as much information as I can to make sure it's valuable while also like remaining anonymous. So let's get into those applications, starting off with that. So I don't have an exact number, but I believe I put out, I wanna say like 10 to 20 applications, and that was distributed amongst like 5 to 10 companies. So basically I would find a company I was interested in and see if they had positions that I'd be a good fit for and was also interested in. And if I was, then I would just shoot them out, right? So multiple positions per company, kind of quantity over quality there, while also making sure it was a place that I'd actually want to work. So yeah, that was my strategy. I don't have any like hard data to justify that that's the best strategy. It's just what I wound up doing. Also, that's helpful for when you're trying to relocate to a specific area. So one requirement was that these places would be in the area that we're moving to, right? In any case, of those 5 to 10 companies I actually reached out to, 3 of them got back to me. So one was a large kind of aerospace and defense company, so same kind of area, types of organizations I worked in school as an intern, obviously. One growth stage startup, also these are all in aerospace and defense. So one growth stage startup, and then one like very small startup. So not to get into specifics, but to give you a general idea, one of these companies was thousands of employees big. Another one was hundreds, and another one was tens, right? So these are pretty different in terms of working environment and level of company progression. Those are the 3 I was talking to, and they were all for relatively similar types of positions that were either relevant to the AI stuff I've done in my full-time job relevant to what I studied in school and did in my internships, or some combination of the two, right? Which is ideally what I'm shooting for, with some combination of the two, because I'm really interested in how we can use AI in aerospace applications, right? It's kind of a new thing. AI is not reliable enough yet that we're comfortable putting it in space very much, and so that kind of burgeoning area is really exciting to me. Let's talk about how each of these companies went. Starting out with the large company, I was pretty interested in this one. One thing that was strange to me was, of all the applications I put into this company, which I think this was one I put the most into actually, I actually got a call back for the one I thought I was least qualified for, mainly because it was a purely AI position, just like what I'm doing now. You know, I think me personally, working at the intersection of these two pretty specialized fields is what makes me a strong candidate for certain things, stronger than if I was entirely just pure aerospace or just pure AI, right? And also, I was a little bit less interested in this position because I was looking to pivot back to what I studied in school. I really do love aerospace. And while I'm kind of working in the same area, right, same industry, I missed that aerospace component, so I wanted to get back in. Didn't really matter much because I did the phone screening. I thought it went pretty well, and I was told that there would be a leak code round in the next couple weeks, which I proceeded to prepare for like an absolute maniac, only to get ghosted. So that was how that turned out. I basically just never heard back from them. Ghosting sucks. It's not fun for anybody. I also understand these companies get lots of interest, and you can only do so much. It is what it is. It's just a toss-up, right? That's how life goes sometimes. That was the first company. And as that one was concluding, the other two started to pick up more, right? So now we're at the growth stage startup as well as the earlier startup, which was actually, I shouldn't say earlier, it was actually older than the growth stage startup. It just had kind of grown less and was still a smaller company, which kind of gets into my interest levels in each. So at first I was equally interested in them both, but to be honest, I'll refer to them herein as company A and B. So A is the larger one, B is the smaller one. Company A was just like super, super cool to me. I mean, they're in this huge growth stage, lots of exciting stuff going on, building a new team. So I'm not going to be joining like a pre-established team. They're building this from the ground up, and I'm one of their earlier hires, doing super interesting stuff that I really think combines all areas of what I've done previously in an awesome, cool way. So that was Company A. By around halfway through that interview process, I was getting like super, super hyped up. Definitely very emotionally invested, which if I was an outsider, I would have said, you know, cool your jets, like try to be logical about it. Don't get too invested until you know that it's actually going to land. I did not take that advice. I just whole hogged it, which ultimately paid off. The other one, Company B, just seemed honestly more like stagnant and disorganized. It didn't, now, I've been interested in working at a startup for a little while now, but I think that it didn't have what I was looking for in terms of a startup atmosphere, mainly being lots of cohesive growth, both as a team and in terms of like technical progress. And just to be honest, I was not as convinced at this company as I was in Company A. Like Company A, I completely drank the Kool-Aid, completely buy their mission and what they're all about and the body of work they built up to now. Company B, I just kind of didn't feel that way. And so I didn't phone it in after finding that out about Company B, after realizing it wasn't really as good of a fit. But I did definitely focus on Company A a lot more. And that's going to be reflected in the results, in case you can't tell. Let's talk about the interview processes. Company A had 5 total rounds. They were all online. There was no on-site. First one was a phone screening with the recruiter, standard stuff. Second one was a technical interview that just dove into my experiences that I had in the past, which in my opinion, I don't have any data to back this up, but in my opinion is the best kind of technical interview, because I feel like asking somebody to be able to whiteboard something out or leak code something out of their ass, having total scope over everything they've ever learned, is kind of silly. Versus if somebody puts something on their resume, I think it's realistic to assume that they can talk about that with a lot of technical confidence and rigor. If you put it on your resume, that's your responsibility. And so that's how this technical interview went. I really thought it was fine. It was good. Good meeting the team as well at this point. This is when I start to get much more invested in this one. After that, I had to do a 45-minute technical presentation on a work item of my choice. I kind of took a gamble here. I wound up talking about my first internship, actually. which I was a little worried about this because I'm kind of getting more senior in my career. I'm still early on, but I'm trying to graduate from entry-level to mid-level engineer. And so talking about my very first internship experience when I was still a junior in college was a little scary to me. But the reason I did that was because it was super, super specific and relevant to what I would be doing in this current job, in this new job, I should say. And so I optimized for specificity over like technical qualifications, I guess you could say. And I think it paid off because they seemed really, really interested in the work. It was very relevant. There's lots of good questions in the Q&A afterwards. Just not to be arrogant, but knocked it out of the park. So happy with how that turned out. Then I had a behavioral interview with a team member, someone I'll be working with in the future. I'll be making a video about behavioral interview strategies. I did actually prep for this a lot because, to be honest, like when I was just coming out of college, the entry-level questions I was given were much, much easier and simpler to nail down than the ones I was given in this round. Then because, again, like I said, I'm starting to graduate to more senior roles and will potentially have people under me that are working for me in a team capacity or interfacing between different teams. Nonetheless, I prepped for that behavioral, really liked the person I was talking to, had a great conversation, went way over time. That went well, as far as I could tell too. And the last thing was a call with the CEO of the company. Super, super interesting guy, really smart. You can immediately tell. Or at least I could tell. Like I said, I drank the Kool-Aid, right? So it seemed like a super smart guy. We had lots of conversations about my previous work experience, a couple of behavioral things, more so about me than like working in teams. I think he was just trying to like suss out what kind of person I am, what my personality is like. And then I asked him a few questions. I also have videos about what to ask the interviewer coming out in the future, because I think that's an often like overlooked part of the interview process. So I tried to ask like relevant questions that simultaneously showed like A, I was really, really interested in the company, but also B, kind of gave me an opportunity to frame things in a way that reflected positively on me. That one also went really well. 15 minutes after that call with the CEO, I get a call from the recruiter that we're like locked in, ready to go for like negotiations and writing an offer and stuff, which I absolutely lost my shit. I went ballistic, completely crazy, called up my fiance, like told my friends, told my parents. I went nuts. So kind of lost all decorum once I hung up the phone. But before we get into that part, let's talk about Company B. So Company B was going on at the same time. It had 3 rounds total. There was a phone screening, there was a technical, which the technical, this one was like a lot more whiteboarding, leak code-y type thing. So very like hypothetical in that way, pretty standard, what you're probably used to, and then an on-site. So right before the on-site, I had found out about this other company working out, which I was super, super excited about. But I wanted to go there, go through the process, try to glean some, knowledge and experience from it, which I did. I think my biggest regret is that when I did ultimately not get the job, so I wasn't offered a position at this smaller company, I didn't really get concrete feedback on why. At that point, to be honest with you, like I was just super relieved that Company A had worked out. I was exhausted because I'd gone so hard on the other rounds. And then we were getting into negotiations, which definitely took some time and attention, right? So I didn't really give this one its full day in court, but I gave it a percentage of my best that I was able to at that moment. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. I still should have gotten concrete feedback, both for myself as well as like to bring to the channel and then share with y'all, but honestly never got that really from the recruiter or from anybody else. So that is what it is. Didn't wind up getting the position, like I said, but at this point, I'm not crying over spilled milk. I'm like super happy about Company A. So that's basically that. Now let's talk about negotiations. The thing that kind of made this weird for me was that Company A had put out like a really wide range, both in terms of qualification and compensation. I know that in terms of numerical qualification, so like degree level, years of experience, stuff like that, I was 100% less than the range. Like I did not meet the minimum requirements. However, I think like I said, I performed really strong in the interviews, and the experience I did have was super, super relevant. So I think that gamble of optimizing for relevance over length of experience or like stature of position, like full-time versus intern, I think that really paid off. And so all this to say, when I was going for a number, I picked one that was basically right in the middle of the range, because it was one that I was comfortable with accounting for cost of living increase and also had like a modest increase over what I'm at right now included in that. And so I hit that number, or I had that number that I told them that was the minimum I was looking for. Later on, I wound up trying to get more because I feel like you should always try to get more. I think it's just the right thing to do. Tried to get more, didn't pan out. Wound up going slightly less, but there were also some peripherals like relocation and other things that I was very, very happy with. And so I was just under the number I'd asked for. And at that point, like I was comfortable with it. Like I said, I'm really, really stoked about this position. And so, to me, I'm still getting an increase over what I currently have. And it's for a job that I think is like a huge step in the right direction for my career. And so that's it. I signed the dotted line. We're good to go. And that's basically how all of that went. So in case you can't tell from this discussion, I'm going to have lots of videos coming out that reflect lessons from this process. It's been a while since I was out like on the market looking for something. I haven't really done this since I was a senior in college. I'm actually one of the first people I know out of all the people I graduated with from school who's moving on to their second job. So I was kind of doing my best to figure it out as I went. Part of why I'm really interested in the stuff that I'm putting out on this channel. I think there's a lack of information about how to do this, especially geared towards young people like us. And so, yeah, I just kind of winged it. I'm gonna try to share as much value as I got from this process with y'all. And as I start this new chapter of my life and start learning a ton of new shit, I will share it with you as much as I possibly can. Because that's what I love to do on this channel. Like I said in the beginning, I'm the Unhinged Engineer. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm super excited to make it. In part 2 of the job hunt series, I guess, it's only gonna be 2 parts. I will distill this whole story I told you today down to like concrete lessons, some of the mistakes I made, and some of the things that I think you should carry with you to your interview process. So hopefully things can work out for you like they did for me. So if that's kind of content you're interested in, I would really, really recommend you like, comment, and subscribe. I think this is a channel for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.